Welcome to Battleship Coves, Inside the History series. We're on Battleship Massachusetts, Big Mamie. We're actually in Turret 2's upper powder room right now, one of them on the port side. And we're here once again with Tom Lowney, USS Wisconsin veteran gunner's mate from turret number 1, and also our resident gun expert here at Battleship Massachusetts. So Tom, what exactly is in this room? It's in very great condition, restored, powder bags, powder cans. Can you talk a little bit about what this room does for Turret 2?
Thank you, Rich. Welcome to the upper powder magazine, Turret 2. This is on port side. Okay, each turret has a powder bag, because this is bag ammunition. Each turret has X amount of magazines per turret to supply specifically to that turret. Each turret separate hoists and setups to get the ammunition in and the ammunition out. So you'd have initial onload that you'd use the hatch in the trunk to bring in the ammunition, stack it, prep it, and then you'd have an internal magazine set up to get the ammunition down into the gun, because everything has to go through the lower parts, the powder flat that we'll go to, and it has to go in that way and then up through the turret. So these powder magazines are set up to store the cans stacked and offset. As you can see, these magazines are set up so that way it's easy access, secured for sea, so when the ship moves, these don't move around. They're interlocked cans that hold 3 bags apiece, so it takes 2 cans to make 1 round. So if you have a turret like Turret 2 that has 525 projectiles, you need twice that amount of ammunition, plus probably 10% in case you have bad powder bags or misfires, to fully service that amount of ammunition projectiles. Because you don't have powder for the projectiles, it's going nowhere. So these magazines are set up and distributed throughout the ship around the turrets, so that way they can feed them. They're also protected in the armor citadel, which is protecting the ship. As you can see, these cans start out and they're stacked and lock in. They're designed, the Mark III cans here for the 45, because they're a little bit smaller than the 50s. All right. The 45s are set up, the cans are very similar, they're just different lengths for a different size bag, because the 16-inch powder bag for the 45 is 90 pounds compared to the 110 for the 50. So the cans are made to store them in groups of 3, interlocked and laced. Now, if you could see on the base, when we get out to the other magazine, there are what's called crow feet on angle irons welded to the deck, and these battens. Battens are just stowage braces to hold the ammunition when properly locked in and stashed. These are designed and laid out so that way you could put the ammunition in and it would fit in and lock and be tight inside the bins. So once they're tight and set, locked in, they're going nowhere. The ship can rock and roll all it wants, and it's not going anywhere. These cans here are sealed by using wedges inside the can layer and the lid. Now to open them, we have a can tool that is geared and allows us to either tighten it or break the seal and open it. And in here you would have your 3 bags. So that way you remove a batten, take the covers off, because there'd be another one here. They're braced here to keep the cans locked in place. So that way when you need the ammunition, you take that one batten out without collapsing the whole stack, and you pull out the ammunition as needed. When you're done, you line the can up, put the lid on, manually turn it, and seal it. Now, you do that so that way the cans and the numbers, because they're usually serialized with the ammunition. Because if you look on bag ammunition, you'll see there are numbers on the side, because each bit of ammunition is set up in batches. So when they manufacture these, and they used to make them right here in Massachusetts, up in Quincy, over by what now used to be the Naval Air Station, there was a magazine that they produced 16-inch gun bag ammunition. The granules is nitrocellulite. It's not black powder completely. Black powder is an ignition pad. So if you look at these bags here, you'll see that there's a red surface. This always faces aft. That's your ignition pad. That pad has 10 pounds of black powder. So that way, black powder flashes initially. It causes a quick, even burn across the whole surface, which ignites the nitrocellulite, which is a slow burn. It's not an explosion in the chamber. You don't want an explosion in the chamber. What you want is a controlled burn. So in order to do that, the ignition pad always faces back. It's red. It ignites that, burns it. The next bag ignites. It's a chain reaction in milliseconds. But it builds pressure that shoots the gun, the projectile, through the rifling and out. Gives you an initial muzzle velocity. So in order to keep that muzzle velocity consistent, you'd make your powder in batches. So you'd have a huge batch, which somebody would calculate how much per batch. Once that's manufactured at one time, these bags, there are liners inside, you would stack the grains, because they're about 3 inches by about 1 inch around, with holes in them all the way through. Kind of like, what is it, spaghetti noodles. What's those ones with the holes in them? But 3 inches long. So that way it'd burn, because oxygen is part of the burning process. So you can't have a solid mass because it wouldn't burn evenly. So you have the holes that are made. When they do it, it's kind of like dough. And when they make it, it's done through a machine, and it makes granules. These granules are stacked in there, and the bags are set up because they look stiff, but they're all separate grains. Hundreds of them inside. So they have to be weighted as well, because each batch you have to know how much pressure that bag is down to the least amount of figure you could figure out. So you have a consistency. So that entire batch, when you fire 3 of these, you'll always have the same result. So when you get a ship, you try to keep all your ammunition in batch numbers. So that way when they call for it, you'd have initial muzzle velocity formula figured out, because now you have to calculate the flight of that projectile, because you're shooting up to 20 miles away, 20 nautical miles. You are taking Earth's rotation, ship movement, target movement, air conditions. You also, in a magazine, you have to take temps every day, because that's part of the firing solution. So when you come into a magazine, over here you'll see where a point where there was a thermometer and a card. You record 3 days of temperatures, so that would work into the firing formula. Right back here, thank you. This one's missing out because these were originally mercury. So when they decommissioned them, they took the mercury out, but they left the holder, and it had magnets in it. And that way you'd have a high and a low of the day. And then you'd take the magnet that would be on here, and you'd reset it and balance it out. Every day you had to come in and check it. So you have your temperatures listed on the card, so you can report for the firing solution for the day, so the fire controlman can figure out initial velocity, temperature, stowage, air conditions, ship movement. All that puts in the formula, and that's how you get the accuracy that you can hit a target at 20 miles within 3 yards. Think about that. And you even take it in the Earth's rotation in that formula. So the fire controlman is just as important. Everybody contributes to the firing solution. The gunner's mates fire the guns, fire controlman do the math, we take care of the guns, get them on target. So always something in there to do. These canisters you see on the side, these weren't used in the 80s anymore. These go back to when you had to test the powder. You'd actually have a sacrificial bag in the magazine that you'd pull a grain out, put it in a canister, and send to the lab on the ship, and they would check to make sure the powder was in good condition and it hadn't sweat, because the temperature is controlled in here in this magazine. These coils above are cooling coils. Right? You have chill water coming in here from the engineering spaces to keep temperature below 70 degrees. Because at 70 degrees, this nitrocellulite starts to degrade in sweat, which makes it unstable. So you want to keep that low, not freezing, but also not too high. That'll start the breakdown. Now there's problems with formulas with that, with the firing solution, that the closer you get to 70 degrees, the more stable the formula is, but that's something for the fire controlman to play with, not the gunner's mate. The gunner's mate's job in these magazines is to keep the place cool, dry, no spark, no rags, no dirt, no anything that can produce a spark or cause a problem. Because when you come in these magazines, black powder, nitrocellulite, and also there's a gas inside here. These are usually charged and pressurized. So you wanted it to seal, keep the powder good, and you use what was called laughing gas. It'd be a mixture of laughing gas, some other, I can't remember the exact formulas of it. But when you open these up, there were stories of guys, getting a little giddy and giggly in here because these cans were pressurized. So space was ventilated, but not good enough. But some people would have to crawl inside to pull the bag out. You'd have a brass hook, kind of like a meat hook. They'd reach up in the can to pull the bag out so somebody could take it and then put it down here, slide it down. So it'd be going down in the hoist. Now these are gravity hoist. You see the foot pedal down on the bottom. It's spring-loaded gravity hoist and weighted, counterweighted. So when you put that bag down on there, once it's on, the hand's clear, you push the pedal, gravity, whoop, drops the powder there. It latches in the bottom. When you pull the bag off, hands are clear, boop, spring, brings it back up, brings it back in place, locks it in. So that's how you get the upper magazine ammunition down one bag at a time to the lower magazine. Okay?
One of the questions that I think some folks would like to know is, and it's just the same thing as in the projectile flat and the mezzanine deck where you showed us how the projectiles were brought in. A lot of cans in here, 6-inch 45 cans. They all didn't come with a ship. I know that Peter Papadakis and his family from Nevada with the Gyrodine Helicopter Historical Group and also Hawthorne Ordnance Museum, always on the lookout for us to help Big Mamie out. They help provide a lot of these cans. Can you talk a little bit about these cans and where you guys got them from? Because I think you were involved at one point in getting some of these cans as well.
Some of these cans came via the Navy at different times. Some of them came from the Wisconsin because they've had these cans specifically for 16-inch 45. They can't use them in their racks because they're shorter.
That's interesting because that's your old ship.
Right.
So it's one of your ships helping your other ship, basically.
We all help each other out. We're museum ships. We help each other out with things. We can't use the cans. So we shift what we have for 16-inch 45 that they can use. But a lot of stuff is interconnected with these systems. They're very similar, but the ammunition cans are definitely different. So right here you see in these cans, to point something out a little extra, is these are the cans that actually fit. They're locked in. You have crow's feet. You have offset tabs that you would actually lock these cans into. As you can see, the cans are almost screw tight. They're offset so that way you could turn them and lock them in. These tabs would fall into a notch in the crow's feet and would lock the can in place, and then these threads would interlock here. Because you see, these threads are set back, these are set forward. Right? So they're almost like a screw type. It allows them to be rolled and locked into place and set. So once you start stacking them, you stack them offset like this, and their own weight keeps them down and locked in place. These particular cans, as you see, are slightly different. These cans don't belong to this gun system. These were acquired because somebody had said, hey, 16-inch 45 cans, you're 16-inch 45, but these are Mark IIs. These were probably, and I'm not sure, but I keep forgetting to look this up, but these are probably for the Colorado. The Colorado-class had 16-inch 45s, but it's a different Mach and mod. They had a double gun turret, which means their guns did not elevate separately. They elevated together as a group.
Interesting.
Cut down on weight, displacement, and the projectiles were shorter and lighter. So they needed less powder, so less powder, less cans. Similar locking tab system and stacking, but these are not 45s for this guns.
So probably part of Battleship history, which is
exactly.
Tell here about
right.
Code, right.
So these are probably a rare find, and
we're glad to have them then.
We're glad to have them because it's part of the gunnery history and how things developed from size. As we wanted bigger, longer ranger guns, we developed and extended. So it's a bit of a magazine history on the content and development of the 16-inch gun.
So Tom, one of the interesting things about this powder room, this particular powder room is actually restored immaculately, and it's restored in a way that unfortunately we don't allow visitors in, just so we can keep that level of restoration, so everybody who comes to Battleship Massachusetts can enjoy it. But one of the questions I know as somebody who loves the United States Navy history and as a Battleship fan myself, how protected is this powder room? If Massachusetts took a hit in this powder room, how explosive would it be? How much armor is protecting this? Could you tell us a little bit about what you think would happen, and if you know of any historical examples, to talk about what would happen in this powder room.
Getting a hit in a magazine is mostly catastrophic. It cascades. But the idea behind the magazines and segregation is if you took damage, you would hope it would be limited to within the space. You would have flame seals on the doors. These doors would normally be closed in between magazines unless you were doing a joint service between the magazines, pulling from one lot to the other, moving it. These bags being 100 pounds apiece, you don't want to throw somebody's back out of personal injuries by moving them around in magazines, because what goes in if you don't fire is got to come back. So now you have to reverse feed the ammunition and put it back into the cans. So you have to know which cans what, where, what lot numbers, because you want to put them back where they came from. So these trays are set up, there's rollers on this one. The Iowa class, they didn't use rollers. They were flat pans. These are all brass trays with rollers, so that way you could easily move the powder. Okay, so these bags were just put on here and rolled, and then that way you'd have a man putting it from the rollers into the hoist, like over here. So you have two hand grabs. This time you don't have to worry about the ignition pad facing the right way. You can just get them right there. You're humping these things. Now remember, each gun is firing every round between 20 and 30 seconds. Think about it, 6 bags. How many people are in here humping ammunition, getting it down to the gun, get it to fire at that continuous cycle? It's manpower. It's hoist and bring up projectiles and powder cars, but it takes people to get them in there because they are such a clumsy system. Now other systems took a little bit longer, like the Amatos and the Bismarck. They had fixed and semi-fixed ammunition, cut down on the time, but time is of the essence in a battle. With manpower, and it was proven with Desert Storm, with the tanks, the Abrams tanks that ran carried and loaded into the gun turret. The Russian tanks, the T-55s, T-62, C-72s, were fully automated systems, but that was a continuous time cycle. You couldn't improve that. But with people, when somebody's shooting at you, you're motivated, your adrenaline's going. If you're a well-oiled team, it's mechanical. You can pick the pace up, you can do it. And that was the beauty of the American gun systems, because they could generate the pace. During Lebanon, I had a friend who was on the Wisconsin with me, Billy Owens. He was in one of the turrets there. They'd gotten the rounds down to 20 seconds apiece for 20 minutes of firing.
That was on New Jersey?
That was on New Jersey and Iowa relieved her. But he said they were going so fast. I think he said he even got it down to 15 seconds. But they had to shift positions, the gun captains. And he says, I had to relieve. I was the hoist operator. He said I had to pull the gunner out because he was exhausted from opening the breech, closing it, and cleaning the mushroom fire. That cycle, it was just, you just offset. If you had a good team, okay, I can jump in, I can do that. And that's what happened. You have a team that knows each person's job. I was qualified for the whole turret. I ran the magazines on Wisconsin. This was my baby, magazines and powder flats at one time. I moved up to that. So you train everyone so that person could step up and go in. The magazines are the same way. You'd have 1st Division take care of Turret 1, offsetting, because it wasn't all gunner's mates in here. These were other services, cooks, machinists, or whoever didn't have a job in a certain space. They offsetted the gun crews. So mostly the bosun mates, deck seamen, they'd come in here and they'd be a gunner's mate in charge, and he'd direct them. He'd train them to get them to handle ammunition and how it moved. Now getting the ammunition moving is important, because you got to watch what you're doing. You're dealing with explosives. So you got a young person you got to make sure he knows what he's doing, when he's doing, how to do it, and doing it effectively. So you have to have all this operating in a smooth cycle. The teams have to know what they're doing. They have to be trained. What if a powder bag rips open? What do you do then? Oh, grains. Oh, crap. You got to stop, freeze. You got to have a rag, wet rags, a bag, and an immersion tank. Wrap them up, put them aside. The bag is put and immersed into it. So no sparks can accidentally trip up, because you might have black powder. Black powder goes like this, gone. Nitrocellulite, different story, but you want to get that stuff over the side. So you immerse it into an immersion tank. We'll show you one of them in the other magazines. But this is all the stuff you have to have ready. There's so much training involved with operating, handling magazine and ammunition. The protection on this one, right here is you have your barbette. Your barbette was 11.8 inches of armor. This protected the fixed ammunition from here. You have belt armor and voided spaces. Now the outside belt, 3/4 inch inner, then there was actually another belt of armor. So you have massive protection because this is the citadel. Your magazines, everything's protected. Gun turret, everything is built on the ship around the turret. When you go to your 5-inch mounts and everything else, those are mounts. They're augmented secondary. They are added into the design. So a turret is the fixed position everything's designed around. Everything on the ship is designed around servicing these turrets. Even the powder mags service the turret. Here we are, protected. But if you had a catastrophic failure in here, it would cascade. But all these flame seals and all these ways you have to get the ammunition down, because if you wanted to take a shortcut, you'd go right through here, but you can't. You want to protect all your ammunition in different segregated areas. Your projectiles, you can have sparks and that around. You wouldn't want them, but they're more resilient to spark damage. Here, powders, you can't have that. When you come in at a magazine, you have to take everything that's spark producing off. Belt buckles are turned around. Boots, you can't have spark producing nails in the boots. They have to have safety boots in here. You can't have any lighters. You'd have a box outside the magazine. Everything goes in there spark producing. Today's technology, you couldn't have a phone. You couldn't have a watch that was spark produced. Everything has to come off. Rings, because when you handle this stuff, you got to remember, you slip, bend your hand, spark, black powder, if it's got a rip, gone. Right here, these are the bins that would hold the powder cans. Since we don't have many powder cans, we have one magazine almost fully loaded. The others have been empty. So that way you can see the vastness of how much ammunition is stored in just one space. Now if you see right here, these are where the cans would sit. All right? You'd have your aft pads, and here are your crow's feet. Now if you see, these are threaded offset so that can fit in and roll and lock in place with the tab. Then you'd set the other cans on top of it, and they would be stacked up against the battens. These battens would help keep the bins latched in place. So now you would have access ports right here to get at this bin and that bin, so you could take the cans out. Then you'd have it all set to go. Now, when you can look up now you can see all the parts of the sprinkler system, a ventilation system, the chilled water, and let's see if we can find it. Yes, right here. You have an alarm system in here that can trigger the magazine sprinkler system. Up there is an alarm. I think it was the FC alarm. I can't remember it off the top of my head, but it has a fusible link in it. So if there was a fire or heat in here where the ammunition was having its get overheated to the point where it required a flooding, that link would melt and a bellow would compress air into the system to a valve that's pressure operated, that they would be able to cool this magazine. So this is the magazine set up to go. No ammunition, but set to go.
So we're in the lower powder magazine of turret 2 right now with Tom Lowney. So Tom, lower powder magazine, looks like we got a rolling tray here, a ramp, and it looks like a dumbwaiter. And I know this somehow loads the powder into the turret. Can you tell us a little bit about what this space does now, the lower powder magazine?
All right, the lower powder magazine, Rich, is where we roll into the armored barbette. Now the barbette here is part of the protection system for the inner turret. So the powder comes all the way down here through these gravity drop waders. Once you release down where the powder bag is, so you'd have a person standing where you are there, taking that powder bag and then placing it in the tray here, so it could either go to this powder packing scuttle or that one. Now this is an aluminum drum in here that rotates. Right? These doors are kept closed until you need to pass ammunition. They're offset with weights so it can be manhandled, undogged, and sent up out of the way, and it gets latched, it gets stuck up in place, or it can be brought down and guided and put into place. It's an armored hatch. All right. So now that you have this powder passing scuttle set up to go, and this is bronze on the inside. Okay, there's also water sprinkler system that's set up to cool this if it had to in case of a fire inside the turret. Now, this drum is operated by a man inside the annular space. Okay, each hatch has a man operating it because he has to pass the powder from the magazine into the annular space, and then he inside there rolls it into on his tray that connects to the next scuttle into the inner powder flat. So you have a person on each station. There'd be 2 people, one here in the annual space, one on the other one in the powder flat, because now you're transferring through 2 sets of hatches. This is just one. You'd have probably 8, if I'm trying to remember, I think there's 8 powder passing scuttles, if not more. For one turret.
Wow.
Okay, you've got 2 here. Another one that's in this magazine, so you have 3 of them here. That's just one side, and there's 3 on the other side as well.
There seems to be, there's an interesting device that actually says that. Does that say for Massachusetts?
Yes, it was.
Interesting enough.
Amesbury, Massachusetts.
What exactly is that device?
This is an enunciator, okay? So here you go, you have to pass this ammunition as it comes down out of the magazines, because you have storage here as well as above. You have to pass it in. Now, how do you tell this person to rotate it since he's in the middle operating the handle without cutting somebody's hand off? Well, he has an enunciator here. This is what he does. You can hear that bell. This one's a little muffled because it's not adjusted right. But in time, you would be able to ring this. You'd secure, return powder, standby, pass powder. So you're telling him when you put the bag, you go to standby. Okay, he's standing by watching it. You're ready to go because you've rolled it in. Okay, pass powder. Now, if he has to return that powder, he's going to go. It rings and it shows. It will move this here as well as in there. 2 sides, and he'd have return, so that way when he rolls it, you got it. Stand by, because now the powder should be facing you. I have to reach in. I don't want you turning that while my hands are in there. So you have to reach in, grab the bag, roll it up. Now there's a tray here. This tray comes up and latches in, which doesn't want to for some reason because it's probably got paint in the way. But that tray would be dropped so you can bring the hatch down, but it'd be flipped up and latched in place so that way you could roll the bag, because you're not going to want to carry 100 pounds all the time. You're going to go nuts. You're going to hurt yourself. So that's why these roll. You roll the powder in, take it, roll it in, set it. Passing powder, stand by. Roll it in. Pass the powder. He rolls it back. Okay. He's going to return the powder hoist so you don't get your hands in the way. He's going to return, brings it over. Okay. Stand by. Set. Okay. Next powder bag. Boom. Roll in. Pass. Because he's got to operate that drum on the other side by the handle to bring it in. So that's every powder bag. Takes 6 of them per shell. Every 20 seconds.
Amazing.
How much manpower is involved in here? Hundreds of people.
So Tom, you basically showed us from the powder magazines, both upper and lower, and how to get it into the armored turret. Can we take a look at what happens once it gets inside the armored turret and
Sure.
how we get powder to the gun?
Go there next.
Tom, thanks a little bit for explaining, thanks a lot for explaining the operation and history here behind this area. Please like, share, subscribe, comment on our video. We are going to head into a part 2 of this series with Gunner's Mate Tom Lowney. So please make sure you come back and watch our next video. Thank you very much.